Did Pavlov ring a bell? No, Pavlov didn't ring the bell. His assistants rang the bell. One of the underrated marvels of the work that we're involved in is that all of the principal developers are still alive. They may not be doing what they're doing before, but they're alive, and they're doing work, and you can study with them. And one of the nice loops in this program is that you studied with David Gordon, who taught his experiential array, his modeling approach. And I studied with David years ago. And when I was studying with David, he told a story that I think bears on this moment. He describes when he was in elementary school, and he wanted to impress a girl in his class. And so when the teacher asked if anybody knew about dissection, David's hand flew into the air, and he said, yes, he did. And they asked what he would do, and in a moment of bravado, he said, I'll dissect a frog for the class. And so now he was committed. 2 weeks he was going to dissect a frog. So he went to the hobby shop. I don't know if you have them in your country, a hobby shop, and he got the visible frog. Now the visible frog is this plastic frog. You can open it up. The frog's like this. You open it up, and it has all the different, you put the little parts together, and it's got the stomach, and the intestines, and the heart, and the lungs, and they're all different colors, or you paint them, depending on the kit you buy, and they have little numbers you can put next to each of the body parts, and then you get a little chart. And David would put together a frog, and he's practicing, this is the lung, this is the guts, this is the heart, and this is the intestine, and so forth. And then the night before he was to do the dissection, he traded his visible frog for an actual frog that a neighbor boy had caught. And used a little formaldehyde, which you could easily get back then. The frog was nice and dead in the morning. He'd bought a dissection kit. And he'd studied the diagrams. And so he had the frog laid out pinned out, if you will, on a piece of board, like this. And he'd managed to get one of his mother's white aprons. And he tied it up high so that he looked like a doctor. And he had decided that the young girl that he had a crush on was going to be his assistant with this. So he's standing in front of his class. Yes, this is David, isn't it? He's standing in front of his class, and suddenly the door opens, and the classroom next door comes in. And the other door opens, and all the classes at that age have decided. So he's got an audience of over 50. Well, he's not worried. Takes the scalpel just like he'd seen Dr. Kildare on television. And he begins it. And all the girls are going, ooh, as he cuts into the frog. An incision. And he cuts the other way. And he takes the tweezers and pulls back to look inside the frog. And he says, and it was a mess in there. Nothing looked like anything. And he paused, and his little heart's beating, and he looks over at his assistant, who's a little queasy from looking at the frog, but on the other hand, looking to David going, and David says that he thrust his tweezers in there, and he grabbed a bit of goo, and he went, this is the lung. And the class goes, ooh. And he reached in and grabbed another bit of goo and went, and this is the heart. And David said, and he went through all the bits of goo until there wasn't any more. And he told this story to our group saying, sometimes when you're doing an elicitation, it might feel a little bit like you look in there and go, it's a mess in there. Because things aren't as clear and categorical as they were just a short while before when they were all labeled and tabulated and in different colors. Yeah. Understand that this is the point of having a model. That, in fact, the world, the territory, if you will, is infinitely rich. That we look at this territory, we listen, we interact with this territory, and as we discover more, we go from earth, air, fire, water, metal, to the atoms, to molecules, we do quantum mechanics. We go from the heart as a pump to the whole circulatory system, and we go to all, and now they know about Krebs cycles and all these other details of biology they didn't know about. The map gets richer and richer. The thing is, to apply a map, that is sufficiently rich for you to be able to do stuff with it, but not so rich that you get lost in it. This is the sense of feeling free to restrict yourself in terms of the distinctions of the map. So you start out and you go, well, there's the outcome, and there's what you do to get the outcome. Very simple two-part map. You can then go, well, there's also criteria for that outcome, and there's behavioral evidence, a little more complicated. You could say, well, and actually there's actual steps in the operation that I could discover something about. We took that a little further and said, well, not only that, but there's different kinds of totes that have different functional properties in this experience called human life. So that there are totes that are decision-oriented, that is, they develop options and then select among them. There are motivation totes, that is, that they accumulate certain kinds of evidence, feelings, brightness, sound, and so forth to a threshold. There are convictions that tabulate time or number to create a generalization and so forth. And the idea here is to add to this as it proves useful to you. On the other side, we looked at the metaprograms. Numbers that vary from the mid-20s to, in some people's models, up into 50 or more distinctions. Again, how useful is it? As I say, I've endeavored to categorize some of these so that you can say, well, we ought to pay attention. How does the person utilize time? And of course, you could go into more detail than past, present, future. You could go in time, through time, between time. You could take perceptual positions, just as, well, self, other, observer, but you could also take, are they paying attention to self or paying attention to other? Who's the authority? Is authority here or over there, or is it some external authority? And so each of these models, as models do, has more and more richness to describe the territory. The question is, what level of detail is making a difference for you? It's not the answer people want to hear, but it is an answer that is a model-based field. Depends on what you're building, depends on what you're trying to model, depends on what difference you're trying to make. So, what did you find out about the differences between the less than motivated and the easily, or at least effectively, motivated response in the people you got to interview? I understand you didn't get all the way around. In the nature of this work, that often happens because it's the process more than the result we're looking at. It's beginning to understand and play with the elements. What were some of your discoveries?
I think the one that was easy to do was pretty well short as far as the strategy was concerned. And some of the other ones were a little bit more different. There was a difference in orientation and time for myself. I future paced, for example.
Okay, so let's slow down here because you're piling up a number of interesting things. First, you were saying, if I understood, is that an effective motivation strategy was short.
To some degree, yeah, I think.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you think about it, that makes sense. In terms of us surviving as a species, if it took us a long time to get motivated, maybe certain things like getting food and reproducing that wouldn't get done, right? So having, and obviously unconscious as well, yes? That is that you had to slow it down and take it apart for the person because it already ran so quickly and automatically. Right, so we know a few things. We know that the length of the strategy, it's going to be short, mostly unconscious. Not that, now, unconscious doesn't mean the person can't think about it, but rather that they don't. They could. You're going to, well, they can stop, slow it down. Well, yeah, I do this, I do that. It's the premise of NLP that we can slow it down and find out what goes on. But the effective ones were shorter and largely unconscious. Now, you're saying something about time and yourself.
Well, when I thought of like I went back to a particular situation, one of the things that I found as well is that if you just gave, okay, in general, what do you think about X?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't work. If we went to a specific time, that's when I got that motivation back. Like I was thinking of going to see a particular movie, and I was like, right on, my friends are going to be there. And,
okay, now I want to underline this because it's not underlined elsewhere, and this goes back to NLP lives in the specific. People will bring you a difficulty that they've already realized is pervasive in their experience. Or people will bring you a request. I want you to coach me to be better as an athlete or an artist or a business person. And they think in general about that, but that's not where changes take place. They take place in the individual moments. So this whole idea of the meta-modeling to getting to sensory-based experience, a particular example, is a very essential feature to getting to the distinctions that make a difference. Yeah. So you're in this particular experience. It's about a movie. You're motivated to go.
Yeah, it was all about, it's almost like I was right there in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was going to take place. It was an anticipation. Now, when I thought of the other one, I guess I was kind of in that as well. So I guess there's really no distinction there. Sorry, but I mean.
No, this is,
Yeah.
this is what I'm talking about. This is on the plateau. The willingness to go, oh. No, there's nothing there. But that playing, that being willing to find out, is where you find the new stuff. Now, what Ron was just describing, going to a movie for most people is not something they need to motivate themselves to do. Does that make sense? Well, I mean, it's optional, it's pleasurable. Not only that, they charge you for it, in most cases. So when I think of what people need a motivation strategy for, I'm tending, and maybe this is my own personal difficulties motivation, I'm tending to think about maintenance kinds of things. You got cleaning the house, doing the dishes, taking out the garbage. Another level, we'd say, doing taxes, preparing preparing the yard for the winter, stuff like this, where there's no particular reward right away, or so it would appear. Right? What do you get for cleaning the kitchen? People say, I get a clean kitchen. I said, yeah, we're just going to dirty it up again. I mean, what's the point? You might as well just leave it dirty, right? Well, yeah, exactly. One's laughing, the guy, the other's going, the woman's going, no. And here we get into, what is it and how does it work? Yeah. So what did you find out?
Okay.
Sure.
This is probably along the same line. We were working on it boiled down to my folding my laundry and putting it away after I wash and dry it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I couldn't really get what it is that I was feeling that would not allow me to fold this laundry. And after we took our short break, and all of a sudden it just lit up right in me now.
And you're going to leave us in suspense.
Yeah.
What is it?
I worked for J.C. Penney's
Yeah.
when I was going to school,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked in the men's clothing department.
Yeah.
Okay, now this was anywhere from 8 to 12 hours of standing on the feet and walking around. And part of it was folding the stuff, the clothes that people would just pick up and they would look at. Part
Me.
of it was getting this together and folding it up and putting it away.
Right.
I just realized that I don't feel the pain, but there's the experience of the pain in my feet from standing all day long
Yeah.
is associated with the folding.
Yeah.
That's what I'm wanting to avoid,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't fold my laundry.
Because we wanted to find out what makes him unfolding or going or going. He just say, I see and there's
Yeah.
something in my head and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But what takes you to...
All right, so you
Yeah.
utilize this in order to get to a specific experience,
Yeah.
and then you're able to do what we call a TD search, transitive derivational search, and go, oh, we're not merely in this moment. There are other moments here.
Yeah.
Past moments, future moments. In your case, you notice there's a past moment in terms of folding laundry somehow being associated with. So what we could do, we bring you up, and we'll do a change personal history. I want just to have you imagine that. By the time I'm done talking, no, you stay there. Because this is practitioner. It's remedial, right? So we take a change personal history, and what would be so wonderful to feel your resourcefulness, your ability to be present, that any other sort of little ache or pain, reasonable, the sense of minor ache or pain, not anything that needed attention, would just be you wouldn't care about it. Now, everybody's got experiences like that. It might be standing on a mountaintop and you've climbed up, to the top of the mountain, and you're kind of tired, and your legs ache a little bit, but you look out and you see this vista, and you just forget all about that tiredness. You forget all about that stuff. Again, what am I doing? It's creating experience, you know, and you probably have something in your life like that, some situation in which you've been in where it's just like, this is just, and you felt like so present.
Yeah, I experienced that just many times when I finished a race in downhill skiing.
Right, so it's like you're racing downhill skiing, you're down at the bottom, and you're feeling that the adrenaline, you're feeling the wonder of using your body in that way, and you're enjoying that, and pennies on your leg, right? So, put a few anchors together. Now, okay, neutralized, now somewhat positive experience about the legs. This still doesn't address the structure of why should he fold his clothes? Why should you do the laundry? I mean, besides the obvious, going to jail and having them take your house away, why should you do your taxes? Oh, yeah, I guess, okay, that would be a reason. So we begin to look motivation towards away from, direction. Are we looking at some sort of a negative consequence, positive consequence, a sequence of those? What were you finding?
Motivation strategies that I think that we have at work have both, actually.
All right, that's not surprising. Jim says the ones he's found had both. Yeah.
So there was moving away from something that was uncomfortable and towards something that was pleasing.
Okay, and so now the next question is, how much time did the person take before they got away from the negative into the pleasing? And he shows us this, which goes to that whole idea I was talking earlier about thresholds, that you could, like Rollo May, be spending time imagining more dishes and more dishes and more dishes, or you could do what? You could look at the counter and say, well, if there's one dish on it, it's dirty, so clean it. Lower the threshold visually. Or you could go through it very quickly. Right. In other words, instead of getting more and more anxious about something, you could go, whoa, and go to action. Think about the different wear and tear on the body. That the wear and tear on the body is much more if you go, and you stay up sleepless nights, and all that. This was pseudo-orientation in time, Ron, what Erickson used to do. The idea is, imagine that you've had those 3 sleepless nights and blah, 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 and the person goes, I'm going to do that. Meanwhile, how long did it take to say that? A minute. So you can either reduce what's necessary to go through threshold or condense the time, the utilization of time. And then what is it, though? It's dishes. What's positive about doing dishes? Or laundry?
Clean house. Looks good. Looks better.
Comfortable feeling, organized.
Oh, okay. Now, if only we would stick with that. We're not going to. Because we're curious. So how is it that being organized, clean house, clean clothes would be motivating? See, if you leave that unexamined, then you don't have a way to work with it. But if we utilize NLP, the idea that we think of that as a nominalization. It's not, it's a generalized noun, clean house. But if you think of it as something you want to meta-model, if you think of it as what are the meta-program distinctions? What is it that's the structure that makes that attractive? Then you could make other things attractive that don't happen to be organized or a clean house. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's examine these. Which one shall we do? We've got clean house. We'll start there, sure. So, we got this idea of a clean house, and we've got some meta-program distinctions. So, tell us more.
Easy to move in. Like if I have a messy room, I find it very hard to move around because there's clothes all over the floor.
Now, stop. What have you heard meta-program-wise? He's in the self position, yes. And what else have you heard? No?
It's place and things.
No? Let me say it again. Ron, Clean house. What's important about having a clean house?
It's easy to move around in. It's
Easy to move around in. What is that? Which metaprogram? Content. Activities. Remember, just because I said the ones that were listed there were the ones that were most foreground, it doesn't mean the other ones don't matter. That's why I put this whole list up here. So in the categories of experience, one of them we have under here is the content metaprogram. What is he paying attention to? He's paying attention to self, I can move around, activity. Tell us more.
easy to move around in. It's not messy. Let's see here. It's comfortable. It's much more comfortable. I like how it feels. I like how it looks. And it's easy to fix once it's clean like that.
All right, slow down. Let's go all the way back to the beginning of those.
Okay.
All right, so it's easy to move around.
Yeah.
And?
It's comfortable. It's something that it's not cluttered.
Hang on. What's comfortable? If we go to the VAKOG, comfortable? Kinesthetic, yes. Actually, it's a special kinesthetic too. It's going to be tactile proprioceptive. It's going to be something he feels. All right, tell us more.
It's easy to fix. If it gets a little bit dirty, then you don't have to do very much. You just have to do that one thing and it's done. Whereas if you let it
All right,
slide
hang on.
for a
Okay,
long time,
it's easy. He keeps using the criteria easy, by the way, just as a point on the criteria. Easy to fix. Yeah?
what else?
No, go back. It's easy to fix.
It doesn't require much effort. There we go, easy again.
Right. Now, what I'm getting at here is hear this what? Hear this much? Doesn't require much. It's comparison, right. It's more or less.
Yeah.
It's comparison. That's my point.
Whereas if it's messy, which it's been a few times, then it becomes difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't stand when it's difficult. It's just, that's when if it hits a certain point and it now is difficult, I'll let it slide for a long time.
Now what just happened there? He says if it gets difficult, do that again. Listen up.
If it gets difficult, then at that point in time, it's like, well, I'll wait till it's really difficult.
What did he do? He passed
raised
over a
the
threshold.
Yeah,
Right.
raised the threshold.
Only the threshold, didn't raise it, he passed through a threshold. And he showed us the threshold and actually did the gesture above it. And when he goes over this threshold, then the motivation strategy doesn't work until he reaches another threshold.
Then it's like, okay, may as well wait.
I believe you. That was, may as well wait. You know. All right, so all of this is actually below a certain threshold, above which is known as difficult. Below here, it's known as easy. And if he gets above this and gets up to difficult, then you don't want to be his roommate.
My other roommates are worse than me, so I don't feel that bad.
Now again, I don't feel that bad. So comparisons again. Ron, what has to happen for you to get to the next threshold? Just as curiosity here.
I can't live in it anymore. It's like, holy, well, we'll leave that part up.
We get the idea.
Yeah.
Is this when like you can't move around in it?
Pretty much. I can't work on my computer. I can't, there's no efficiency left. You know what I mean? I can't move
When there's no efficiency, not that there's no efficiency left.
Yeah, exactly. It's
It's all
like,
used up.
I can't do anything and I get sick of it. It's just like, oh my God.
Now,
I better do something.
well, let's pause on here. Organ language. Go way back to Fritz Perls. Right, yeah, that people, as I talked about going to threshold quickly, is that people, then it goes on and on and on, and literally they get sick is the idea. They somatize their experience, become sick in order then to do what?
To make it easy again.
Yeah.
Like I can't, like, I like it when it's, you know, I like things to be, you know, just a few things. If you clutter things up, then you lose the ability to move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to have it so that everything's in its place, everything serves its purpose. But, I mean, then you get lazy again, you know what I mean? Like you just let things stack up and then you hit that.
It's like, I like this Ericksonian pattern. Then you get lazy.
Well,
All of a sudden he started referencing you.
Right, yeah, it's what I say. They're slippery, these people. You got to watch them, listen to them every second, you know. So we've got an interesting situation here. He does have a motivation strategy that does keep his place clean, provided it doesn't go over a certain threshold. And then there's a long sick-inducing part, you know, and then when he, you know, then he's got, I imagine it's sort of like you burst out, you go, you know. Well, to burst out of it, in other words, to make movement again. Yeah. So we could go back in the NLP manual, practitioner training, and offer him the strategy. There's a motivation strategy in the practitioner manual. And what you do is you visualize how you'd like it to be. And then each step forward you take, you experience part of it getting done. So the closer you get, the more done it is. And the more you're to where you want to be with it. Which we know would work fine as long as we're below this threshold. Let's take another approach to this. Yeah.
Is there something in the area of options and procedures that would make it easier or harder?
Well, that's where we're going to go, Eric. We're going to begin to experiment here. Is like, if we know that these already, we can hear them easily in Ron's speech, are part of what's going on, what about playing with some of this? So remember what I was saying before about the discoveries that myself and Laura made, the idea that if you took one from each category, you could actually affect the system. We know that he's got the content metaprogram here, and we know he's working with the direction about making things easier. What about this so-called chunk size or scope? Okay, so you're saying that when the place gets so messy, well, I would suggest, and we're going to find out in a moment, that Ron is holding the whole place as one scope or one chunk, if you will. And I'd say, Ron, I'm asking you because I really don't know. When you think about the idea of cleaning up, having room to move, and again, what am I doing? I'm utilizing the metaprogram language is going to make a difference to him. Do you think of that as the whole place where you live, or do you think about it as one room at a time? Or do you think of that as like one corner of a room?
Well, I'm thinking of my bedroom and I'm thinking of my office upstairs.
Right. And I'm thinking, what if you thought of your bedroom as one and your office as one? In other words, they're separate. They're two separate areas that you want to be able to move easily.
I can think of them as separate. Yeah.
And what if you thought of a corner of your bedroom as one? In other words, what if you addressed yourself to making a corner easy to move in, and then went to another corner and made that easy to move in? What's that experience like?
Well, I got to do the whole thing. That's how I experience it. It all has to be done. It's nothing. It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing, right? No. I would want to call that into question because, Ron, you ever gone out to dinner?
You bet.
They ever brought you a big, wonderful meal or even, say, a series, like a 4-course, 6-course, 7-course meal? You get the idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Did you want to eat it all at once?
no, I can't.
Well, yeah, okay. Maybe you wanted to, but you can't. Right. I would suggest the same thing about your space. That you can have this whole space, and it all has to be done. But rather than thinking of it that way, you could go, well, there's this part of it, and then this part, and then that part. And of course, it will all get
The
done.
only problem with that is that, you know what, here's what happens. I'll do that part today,
All right?
and then I'll do the other part in a couple of days. And the other part that I was working on then gets messy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, if I don't do it all, it's gonna just, it's gotta be one big bang, and that's it. Like, once I get it all done,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, okay, now I can try to maintain this. And then it slowly and surely starts building up towards it being a mess again.
Yeah, okay, now that's even. Yes, we have this thread.
Okay, Mom.
Ron,
Do it, whenever you see something.
just say no.
Doesn't do the trick.
Right, that's the thing. It doesn't fit what? Meta programs. This is why we're spending our time on this. Is we're going, okay, so with Ron, it's all got to be done.
Pretty much, yeah. If it's
Now,
not
you hear
done,
that-
then it's not,
Right, so we've got,
because I know I'll get lazy about it.
Do it in chunks, small chunks. Wait until you got the big chunk. Check his level of
so we've got a larger scope because you got the whole thing has to be done.
It does, yeah.
And he also, now what are we also hearing? Modal operators of necessity. It's got to be done, right?
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question about time. It's as though there's
Sure.
a presupposition that it's got to get messy. And is the idea of keep cleaning it up late in the process? You want a clean house.
I want to, the other domain I can't really take care of. I don't like cleaning up after others. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Yes.
something that just annoys me, because then I'm their maid. But for myself, when it comes to my room, I want to be able to move easily. I want to be able to, just go into a nice, fresh, clean room. And that's the same thing with my office. I want to have, like, in the loft there, I want to have it all organized, I want to have it all there, and I want to be able to do things easily. And once I let things clutter up, and it's funny because usually it's towards the end of it. Like, the end of the day, I've spent all this time working on something in my office, and I'm like, I can do that later. And that's where it starts. That's where it slowly starts.
Dun,
building.
dun, 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 dun.
Pretty much, because then I come there the next day, I'm like, well, I got something to work on. I really don't want to do that right now, so I get to the computer, do whatever I have to do, and then I pile something else on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it slowly starts piling up, and then eventually I'm just like, I can't do this anymore.
No,
there's-
it's very expressive. Too bad you're not again. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly, because
Yeah.
I can't move now. And it's the same thing with my room. Just throw it on the floor, go to sleep.
Okay,
You know?
so that was a big, Rick, what did you got a lot of interesting information. Did you get what you were listening for? There is something about time. There's several things about time.
And that one step, when I'm done working on the computer and I put something aside,
I'm too lazy to, well, not too lazy, I don't want to do it.
He
I
thinks
shouldn't
of
have
it as
to.
an option, not as a procedure.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple things here. And I like where because remember, we're playing with the elements. We're feeling free enough to just wonder, well, geez, we spend what, 10 minutes on this?
Yeah.
And what are we getting? You understand how all sorts of interventions we might have tried wouldn't have had an effect simply by taking a few extra minutes and listening in on how Ron does it. So going back to, again, utilize the model. What we've got here is that we've got the whole thing, right? And what Rick was kind enough to point out is that he takes the time where it goes on and on and on. And then when it gets really messy, then we go into cleaning again. As opposed to, what you were suggesting, Anwar, is he'd do it in a shorter time cycle. I'm getting it. There's another whole area in NLP strategies they almost never address, which is the sampling rate or the cycle time. Because you're sampling often enough to know that, oh, it's getting messier, but none of that drives you to behavior. No. Which is kind of curious. You just sort of, it's like you're like poking yourself. Yeah, it's getting messier. Yeah, it's getting messier. No, it's not enough of a poke yet. No, it's getting messier. Whereas for other people, that poke would be enough to do something then. And you look at him with astonishment that he doesn't get this. This is about models of the world, folks. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about models of the world.
And the reason being is because when I walk away, I don't see it. That's exactly it. Oh, well, if I walk away, I don't feel the poke anymore.
So a solution.
You walk in, you will see everything.
I don't know if that's a solution, but because
Well, yeah, it is. It's a short-term solution.
yeah,
You know, just walk away. You know, it's,
yeah, that's exactly it. If I don't see it, it ain't happening, is it? Yeah, that's exactly it. Keep that in mind. Yeah,
all right.
then I got to see it again later on.
So now let's be clear. This is a less than effective motivation strategy. All right?
I don't want to be.
Now, no, I bring that up for the following reason, is there are groups in the U.S. where what do? They get everybody together who has the problem to talk to each other, as if somehow this is going to help. Now, in fact, it does. Why does it help? It normalizes the problem. That people think, whether it's alcoholism or drugs or smoking or whatever, that the crazy world they come from is theirs and theirs alone. And so to come to a group and talk to other people who have the same problem normalizes it. They go, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. This happens to people. Other people have their story. And even they can exchange strategies about what to do. The difficulty is that they're still within a group of people who don't actually have clean and clear solutions. So there's a certain degree in which these organizations really do help. And there's another threshold they reach in terms of their ability to make a difference. We want to find out who has effective motivation strategies here and find out if there's anything we're missing from the one we did with Ron. This is, again, contrastive analysis modeling. We know a good deal about what Ron's doing. We have some leverage areas, I think. And I'll point out that one of them would be this, another would be this, another would be comparisons. We can leverage that, but which direction? How are we going to leverage it? Let's find out something about some other people. Eric.
I have a question. How would you denote the visual out of awareness that makes it keep going?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, he said that when he doesn't see it, then it's out of mind.
I wouldn't call that out of awareness. He looks at it, goes, poke. I'm not going to look at that anymore. Oh, I feel better.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
How would you denote that in the VAK or in the steps?
Well, it'd be a visual, see external, mess, have negative K, and then K, proprioceptive, walk away. Okay? Of course, then he comes back and he sees the mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't bother.
And then it has, as soon as it gets to the point where I got to do something about this.
Right, I got to do something about this. Now that voice happens as a consequence of a feeling when
It's too much.
it's too much.
Yeah, it's way too much.
It has to be way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, this really bothers you, doesn't it?
What's happening for you?
All right, so I think maybe you have a strategy we want to hear about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is it that you do? What is the content?
Do you want the washing?
Okay, washing, all right.
Okay.
So,
Like 2 days ago, I decided there are clothes to be washed.
okay, now is this when you've completely run out of clothes?
No, because I used them probably twice or 3 times.
Right.
They look dirty. They look like spots on them and wrinkles.
Okay, So spots and wrinkles, and do you have a basket full of them? Is it lots and lots of spots?
No. One spot is enough.
One spot is enough. All right. So what are we talking about? Lower threshold.
I hate threshold.
I believe you. I believe you. Okay. So and then you. So what you then what happens?
Then I say, oh, it's time to wash. Take them to the washing machine.
Okay. Now in that moment, she went blink. It's time to wash. I want to know what happened in that blink.
How?
So you see the dirty clothes.
And I feel good after that. I say, oh, yeah, I have something to do washing. Because it's just
You're going. It's an alien mind.
dump them in the washing machine and let it wash. That's it.
Let's go wash
I don't
clothes.
have to bother.
I don't get that.
Get it? This is my strategy.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
I
what
work.
else though?
What else?
I mean, it's like, so what? You've got clean clothes. It's like for him. Yeah. Ooh.
I feel relaxed. I feel comfortable. I don't have to worry about it. I hate when I see too many things.
Now, does that resonate with you at all?
When I see too many things, that's probably a bigger picture for me. Like I see a lot of things.
Right. No. The other part, Ron. The other part.
Which part's that? The who part?
She says,
I feel comfortable.
I feel comfortable,
Relaxed.
relaxed
When what?
when
I've done this.
it's done.
Done.
Well, I feel relieved when I'm done too, but that's like, I mean,
Now it's different here. It sounded like the same, but she's going, I feel relaxed. Now, relaxed, relief is, of course, away from, but you also watch this. How do you feel?
Relaxed and comfortable.
And she starts smiling, like, yeah, I feel, I mean, this is serotonin. I feel good.
As if it's something on top of me and it just, it's done.
Okay, so that's an away from, it's gone. And now,
Ugh,
yeah,
I don't have to worry.
released, relieved.
when I'm, yeah, absolutely. When I've done it, it's like, it's done.
But your
Mhm.
junk is big, my
And then
junk
it's like-
is very small.
Yeah, that's what see. He doesn't get the. She's like glowing in the pleasure of this, and he's going. It's done. Then,
Looking
Dun,
down,
dun.
Yeah,
Dun,
it's
dun.
coming up again. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
slowly but surely. And then it's like, oh, I'm not gonna do anything about it.
All right, now, indulge me a moment.
Sure.
What if it goes like the dun dun, dun dun, dun dun, and you go, little shark, and you just took care of it then, and you felt that relief and that good feeling.
I don't know.
Well, go ahead and try that on. So you see, in other words, it's all, first of all, you've done it. It's all
Do you know
done.
what it is? It's doing it too much. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I washed it, boom. I'm like, one dish? Do you know what I mean? And
No,
then-
not one.
Okay, maybe two? Mm,
You know, there's a
think maybe
tribe that
four.
I actually did some consulting to, and their number system was 1, 2, 3, many.
oh, really?
Remember this tribe?
No.
Okay,
1, 2, 3, many.
yeah. Okay, good.
No.
So, Ron, imagine yourself behind a plexiglass bubble. Safely, relaxed.
Okay.
Okay. And over here, there's a guy at his place that looks remarkably like you.
Sure.
But far enough away, you can just be relaxed here and watch him.
Okay.
All right. And the place he's in, it's all clean. He can move easily.
Excellent.
Excellent. Right. And then you see he does some project at his desk, right? He gets it done. Feels good about it,
Mhm.
right? And then he looks at his desk, and it's like a bum 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 bum, And he realizes, as he thinks into the future, that he will have more ease, more ability to move freely if he just cleans it up right now.
Makes sense.
No, you watch him do that. You're just watching it. And you watch how he feels good as he looks at it, and he can even imagine when he comes back next time, it's going to be that way. And he relaxes and goes, yeah. It's easy to move, easy to do what he wants.
That's different.
What's that?
Well, it looks good for
Yeah.
him, I guess, yeah.
For him? Okay, what's going on over here? I mean, it looks good for him. I mean, you know.
Well, what I see is, I'm just like, I can see that happening for other people, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
I think of myself, and it's just, I know that I get into the habit of letting things slide all the time. That's just a part of my nature, I guess.
Ah. So belief change, self-concept. You should talk to Steve Andreas. He's coming by tomorrow. No, that's what I'm saying. So you're listening for, so there's extra stuff tied together here. It's, we can teach him the strategy, but vis-a-vis the categories that Dilts puts up, we could predict, at this point anyway, that even having the new strategy, even if he read it in a book and it was by some authority and whatever, that he'd be less likely to apply it, right, because of a sense of self. You ever surprised yourself?
I'm not too sure. Well, I'm not too sure about that too, because there are times where, you know, like, I do clean. Do you know what I mean? And
Well, yeah,
I
I
do it
got
for
that.
a long period of time, but there are times where it's just, and it seems to just follow a cycle. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are times where I'm extremely clean, everything's done, and then I just fall into another rut. You know what I mean? Where, say for example.
I almost saw that rut just then.
Yeah. You know, where I just, you know, I get so distracted. You know, like there's too much things on my plate, and that's why. I mean, it's not like I don't want to clean. It's that I have other distractions that are making it very difficult for me to clean. I don't know.
This, by the way, is called retrospective rationality.
Okay. What's that?
Well, I don't doubt that you have a lot to do,
Yeah.
that people do have a lot to do. The idea, though, is when people come up with reasons for why they did or didn't do things, it turns out that it activates a part of the brain, and it happens after the event. That is, that people come up with reasons after the event. This is, you can look at the work of Michael Gazzaniga on this, and Martin Seligman, called The Interpreter. It gives our experience coherence, because you do need reasons, because you do have a lot on your plate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I would think so.
Yeah, sure. So even that being the case, I'm curious if you just would play with this rehearsal a moment and just see what happens. Because what I'm doing here, I'll give you a sense of this, is I'm taking a smaller chunk, yeah, and I'm also playing more with time. That is something that we noticed, Rick, in the strategy you're talking about, and on more strategy. People project themselves into the future, and they come back. So, and you can project yourself, as Rollo May did, and you can get the hugely messy house, which you don't project yourself in the future. You just wait till the house really is messy.
Pretty much.
Right. So we could teach a Rollo May strategy and to go quickly through it. You know, imagine your house is messy. Oh, you got to clean it. You've already got it. You already whip yourself enough.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
right. We want to find a different way to do it.
Okay.
Now, being a different way to do it, what do we know from meta programs? He doesn't make a lot of distinctions in the direction of toward so far. All right? I mean, this is a guy who has trouble going to a movie sometimes, and that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to find more ways that he's going to feel pleasurable about his experience is actually to create new meta program distinctions. This is where the idea of strategies and meta programs begin to come together. This goes also to the idea of submodalities. Anwar, what are the submodalities about the close? I think this is a girl thing, but well, they're bright and they're big and they're smooth. I heard that. But there's another one, smells clean. Smell, the women go, smells clean. They have this thing about smelling clean clothes. And this is hugely motivating. That's a reward. They ask Jackson Pollock, Jackson Pollock, the American painter that basically splattered paint, and they asked him what he liked about painting, and he said he loved the smell. So he could always paint because you get the smell of the paint. And so there's this richly developed reward at the other end. And see, with you, you're going, well, yeah, if I clean up, then I relieve the clutter. That's the away from we were talking about, right? But we don't find the toward. And so looking at this structurally now, we go, okay, well, we need to build the toward. All right, see your office big and bright and clean. That would be a standard technique approach. But we know, metaprogram-wise, it's not even up there. It might not be about bright and clean. It might be about ease of movement. It might be about feeling comfortable, because he's already let us know that those are the distinctions of experience that he's making so far that he could make about this future moment. And then we could elaborate more. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so Ron, I've been talking in this direction. What do you think?
I like it if it's easy.
Okay, so what about making it easy for this guy out here? What about making it, and how do you make stuff easy? This goes, again, NLP presupposition. If something is too big,
It's hard.
chunk it down. Now, we run into a situation here with Ron that he doesn't like to chunk stuff down because he responds to a large scope. He has to clean the whole thing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So understand, not only are we teaching Ron how to leverage his own metaprogram leanings, like seeing this guy out in the future being able to move easily and do the activity he likes and being comfortable with it. We're also teaching him to make a metaprogram shift of going from the large to noticing how the small is part of the large.
Well, if I zoom in on it, then it becomes large. The cup now becomes large.
Ah, I love it when they help me. All right, so you can do that. So you could zoom
Yeah, I
in.
could, yeah.
So this guy out here, he can zoom in on the desk.
Here's the problem. Well, here's the problem.
Go ahead, say, here's the problem. Go
Well,
ahead.
here's the problem. If I see the entire desk,
Mm-hmm.
and I see the one little tiny thing that's dirty.
Right.
And then if I put all, like, the mess, and the more I put on the desk, the more it fills up that scope of the entire desk.
Right.
And therefore, now I'm motivated to clean it. Before, like, if I were to just to think of that one little thing and, forget about the desk, that's when it becomes easy. That's when I get motivated to do it, because now that's become large to me.
And how is this a problem?
It's not, I guess, if I were to look at it like that. Then it's not a problem. If I were to zoom out and look at the entire desk, well, that's just one little tiny thing to clean.
So it's easy.
Well, if I zoom out and I see the one little thing, I'm not motivated to do it. But if I zoom in on that one thing and I see it as this, then I'm like, oh God, I better get rid of that. That's when I'm motivated to do it.
All right. Ron, again, what is he doing? What is he doing again?
He's going large from small.
He's doing either or. That was the little metaphor I said earlier about 1, 2, 3, many.
Yeah.
That's in reference to that, because he keeps doing this. He keeps doing a couple, one or two things, and then whoo, everything. So what we want to do, what we're doing here is we're encouraging Ron, focus in on that one little thing that you have to do,
Yeah.
right? Now I want you to begin to slowly unzoom till it becomes easy. And you can do it because it makes you more comfortable and you can have more activity.
Okay, so if I were to. Okay, so this big is okay. At this point in time, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I push it too small, then I don't want to do it because it's too small.
Or the idea that I'm listening for is when he focused on the one little thing, he has to do it. Modal operative necessity.
Yeah.
But it's pressured as opposed to getting a big enough, but not too big scene that he begins to relate it to how doing that little thing, which therefore is easy, will add to his ability to be comfortable, will free him up to be active and be able to move easily and do what he wants, do a better job of what he wants.
Okay. It has to also be, it also, like say for example with my laundry, it has to be logical as well, and it's gotta be economical. In the sense that if I have too little laundry, well, now I'm just throwing money out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely, because this is what we're doing, Ron. We're rescoping.
Okay.
Because here's the deal, I'll tell you, you've had the big scope where you get to feel bad and overwhelm yourself,
Yeah.
and you got the small scope where you're nitpicky and you're taking way too much time because it's not making you comfortable, it's just eating up your life.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that there's a middle scope, somewhere that you know where these activities, whether it's laundry, cleaning your office, they become little things, and you notice when you do them at that size, it's economical, it's cost effective, and it frees you up for more activity. You get to feel comfortable more of the time. You get to go to that desk and it's like it's ready to go. So you'll get more done.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want you to make clear and vivid movies, what we were just talking about,
Yeah.
but I wonder if you can.
Of course I can, yeah.
Again.
Sure, okay.
And what is it that is most responsive in this? Is it the ability of this guy to move? Is it the comfort he feels knowing that things are in their place, that he can scope it in a way that it's better for him?
It's basically knowing when
Okay,
to actually respond, instead of waiting till things get too big.
right.
That's what it is. It's
So
basically.
notice that, and notice that that threshold might be different for the desk, might be different for the bed, might be different for the laundry, but each of them have their level
Yeah.
that he knows, and consequently you'll know.
Okay. So what I'm looking for is just a happy medium.
Right. Your happy
My
medium.
happy medium,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Which,
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
Which I want you to think about, imagine fluidly in the different rooms and situations of your house now while I talk to them about something else.
Okay.
Okay. What we've got here, and the reason I've taken the time with this, is you begin to appreciate how ordinary language, like finding a happy medium, is certain criteria, has certain complex equivalents, and that when you can model it out, becomes richly meaningful. That what you can do when you get this point in your NLP is you can begin to work with people conversationally. That is, that if I were talking to Ron about this kind of stuff and I'm watching the different accessing cues and I'm listening to the meta programs and I'm listening to the strategy, I don't need to write it all down or tell him about it. But I realized I said, oh, I got it. This guy's doing this all or nothing thing, and he's not going to be compelled by the smell of the laundry, and he's not going to be compelled by the clean workspace, like it might say in some of the anti-clutter books. No, what's going to compel him is that he can do it easily and that he gets to feel good and move freely. Now, I might later begin to want to overlap that to the visual. Well, I'm going to start where he lives with his metaprogram sorts, with his representational system biases, and then help him to rescope the experience, to help him to utilize time to his advantage. And then if you find yourself living a better life, well, you can just deal with your self-image, you know? Or you can talk to Steve in the next few days and
Okay.
get a new concept on life,
Sounds like a plan.
okay? Allow me to invite you to chew this over lunch, or talk to each other about it, or just put it in the back of your head to wonder about how people do have patterns, and they do what they do because they did it before until they do something else. And that we are in a position, given what we know, to nudge in those directions. Is this a...
Sort of a question, I don't know if you want to put this on. Anwar made a statement a little bit earlier she said, I have something to do.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed some physiology there, which was sort of excitement.
Mm-hmm.
But in contrast, still to clarify it, that versus I have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I have something to do is sort of a toward thing.
I would say, especially given the analog you gave me.
Yeah. And I have to do something is the way from. I
Mhm.
just wanted to clarify that I was understanding properly. I have something to do. You were happy, not happy, but excited about that. Okay, it was not just a transposition of the.
No, and if we go back to the context of her strategy and speak in terms of Ron's, is I have to do something. I mean, both of them share modal operator of necessity.
Right.
And I don't mind utilizing that as long as the person doesn't know how to live there. So in Ron's case, is like, if the clutter starts to build up, he has to do something,
Yeah.
or it won't get done.
So he's down
But the
to that.
point is, as soon as he realizes that, that's the poke, right? At that point, it's very liberating to have the sense of agency, to have the sense of ability, is I can do something about this. You know, then it's like, I can make a difference in my world. And the difficulty, as I understood Ron, was that given his large scope, was that he had this idea that he had to do all of it or none of it. And in that way, he gets lots of pokes, gets to feel bad longer, right? You know, and then when he does do something, he has to commit time to it. It's exhausting. He gets to feel good at the end, but then he looks around knowing that it, right. Whereas what we took from Anwar, with your permission, thank you, was her thing that it didn't take very much to get her to go to action. Same thing, I have to, but then I can make a difference in my life. And talk about Erickson's work, one of the things that Erickson would work with people was for them to experience themselves as the person at choice in the situation, that they could make a difference in their own experience. It's one of the key things in brief therapy as well. So yeah, we find it in the strategy, not surprising. Jim?
I don't want to dwell on this, just really want to come back to it
Yeah.
later. One of the things that's running through my mind here is there some motivation, does he get a bigger feeling of empowerment because he lets it get so bad? Could that be part of what's driving this too? It's the contrast
Okay.
between how bad this feels and how good I feel when it's back in order. And if it's only a little bad, I don't feel quite so good. But if it's really bad, I feel really good.
All right. So an interesting question. I like the way you phrased it, is a suppose, as opposed to saying, well, I know what's going on here.
No,
Now, this goes back to the idea of the scope and the number of distinctions one makes. And this goes back to metaprograms. The idea that if you only make distinction like good, bad, right, like then you get that big hit. But if you make more distinctions, then you can feel the gradient in each one. Right. So goes back exactly to with Ron is we want to build up more differences so that it isn't an on-off thing. So it isn't an all or nothing. But in fact, he can go, there's all and there's nothing, and then there's some, and there's a little bit more, and there's even better than that, and it's even better, and so forth. So then these differences can be as significant as these were. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, let's attend to other biological needs, and I'll see you back here in an hour and a half.